I think I'm sharing the screen, aren't I? Is that sharing on the 1920 monitor? So I might as well just tell you a bit about it and what it is, and why I've done it, and that kind of stuff. First of all, I was going to install it first and kind of do it that way, but in case it all goes wrong, this is probably the best way to do it. So I ran a agency called Whole Thing for, as I say, we're coming up to 20 years now, and we started off just building a website for London cycling campaign. Alt Nathaniels and I were both cyclists in London, and we just built this CMS in classic ASP just for one website, and then somebody else wanted one, and someone else wanted one, and in the end we thought, oh, we'd better start a company, because both of us were freelancing, and it was much easier for clients to deal with one organisation. And very early on, we realised that most of the projects we were doing, the basis of them all were all the same. They were all the same thing. They all had a homepage. They all had content pages. They tended to have what we ended up calling index pages, or section pages. And just with those 3 templates alone, we felt we could pretty much build anything. And for the best part of 20 years, we did. So we initially ended up building what we used to call our grey website, which was, I suppose, a lot of people call a starter kit. So what it was a CMS that we could set up in 10 minutes with a load of blank templates and a very basic layout, that with a bit of CSS. I don't know how many of you remember Zen Garden, but that's the analogy. There you go. It's the analogy that I use, because I put hooks in all of the HTML and ASP. It meant that I could use those hooks to mean whatever they wanted. So page title is a page title, a section title, so on. I mean, you're all familiar with templates. And luckily, my background was in developing types of brand identity agencies, where I got very familiar with brand guidelines. So, there's the whole idea of design systems and component libraries, all very trendy nowadays, but not showing off that I was doing it over 20 years ago, but I was. And, it hasn't changed since. For me, I just find it very, very quick and easy to build sites from a starter kit that's unopinionated. So I know a lot of people will start a site, they will download a starter kit off of Theme Forest or something based on what it looks like to give them a head start. I kind of think the opposite, because then when you try and change stuff that's already quite opinionated, it's actually quite hard. Whereas if you've got something that's unopinionated or implicit rather than explicit, it's very easy with CSS, especially nowadays, to completely change the look and feel of it. And it's not a secret. We've been very honest with our clients over the years. We've said, do you like this site? Do you like this site? Do you like this site? And they say, well, I like this bit in this one, and this bit in this one, and this bit in this one. And because it's all components, we just assemble it all. And for years and years and years, I've always wanted to do something in Umbraco that kind of follows that trend. But it wasn't really easy to do. You got compositions, but the way that I was building stuff, the equivalent would be compositions of compositions of compositions. You kind of building stuff out of these blocks that nest inside each other. We just never had it. And at one point, I started playing around with things like doc-type grid editor, which kind of gave me that kind of ability, I guess. And then eventually, Umbraco announced they were going to do something similar to Blocklist called Block Grid, that would allow you to nest things inside other things. And the way that they were going to do it was quite interesting. They were asking for people to get involved, and I had a couple of meetings with them, and I said, please keep it unopinionated. Don't make it a grid that's physically a grid. Can you just make it things inside things? And that is kind of what it is. And then to add to that, I mentioned to them that CSS Grid is exceptionally flexible, and we currently use CSS Grid with block list, but not in a nice way. And it would be really great if the new block grid system followed the underlying principles of CSS Grid, and it does. So this weird thing happened. They released it, and it just felt like putting on a custom glove the first time I used it. I absolutely loved it. So I guess the second part of it was, so we started building sites using block grid, and as I say, I wanted to do something for the community for a long time with Bootstrap. But I spoke to a lot of people. What do you? I think it was Carol at one point posted, does anyone know of a quick Bootstrap thing? I just want to get I've got to get something up in a day. Is there anything ready made? And the problem with Bootstrap was it was using Flexbox for layouts, not CSS Grid at the time. By magic, literally the week that Umbraco launched Grid, Bootstrap launched CSS Grid in Bootstrap behind a flag. You have to enable it, and I can show you that later. And I just thought, well, I can't think of a better time to do it. I looked at the way that HQ had built their example website, and that's what gave me the inspiration. So you'll find me thanking a lot of people along the way here with how this came about. Usual story with anything on Umbraco, it's the community. Every single bit. I could not have done it without different aspects of the Umbraco community. So that kind of brings me on to the second thing. So I wanted to do this thing. I was thinking about how to get it started. And to be quite honest, yes, it would have been a grey site, but we used to use our grey site at Whole Thing for all different kinds of things, for testing stuff out, for rapid application development, to quickly show a client what something might look like. If you've got something that you can get up and running quickly that is a working website with a bit of dummy content in it, you can do all sorts of things very, very quickly. So that got me thinking that the way Umbraco released Block Grid was with this .NET New template, the same way that Umbraco can be installed with a .NET New template. I was familiar with them, but I just didn't really know as much about them as I'd like to have done. So I put a post on Discord, and Lottie responded very kindly and said, it sounds like a great idea, but there might be some difficulties with content. And a few other people got involved and said, well, there's ways of doing it, and getting the content in, all the rest of it. I think it was Jason Elkin that mentioned, you might be able to do it with Usync on boot, for example. And I was helping Aaron with some stuff at the time, and Aaron came up with exactly the same idea at the same time. And he said, look, if you use Usync on boot, you could quite easily make something that if somebody takes a copy of that site and it boots up and adds all the content. And again, it was another fantastic bit of luck, I think, and also being part of this community. I'm going to keep saying that. I'm not ashamed to say it. I just think that is the benefit of this community. You think of an idea, you're not sure how to do it, somebody will help you do it if they think it's a good idea. So yeah, Lottie thought it was a great idea. We've done a YouTube video of how to turn a website into a .NET New template, and that's part of used to be Umbraco on a Thursday, and that's up on YouTube. So if you want to go and have a look at that, I'll share some links later. So yeah, Umbootstrap was born. It was just me mucking around with Bootstrap. I started it off in Razor pages, funnily enough, rather than in Umbraco. I just started messing around with testing out the CSS Grid, and yeah, what you can see in front of you is the end result of it. I'll take you into the back end in a sec, but I guess, what is it? I mean, I've called it here, Umbootstrap's an Umbraco website starter kit using Bootstrap templates and a comprehensive component library. So yes, it is a starter kit, but would I recommend building a website from this? If it's a small one for a mate or, you know, local, I don't know, theatre group or something like that, probably yes. But if you want to think about upgrade paths, probably not. Really, the idea of this was to A, teach people about block grid, B, teach people about CSS grid, C, teach them about how to combine the two. That this is Christian, who I'm working with at the moment. That's so lovely of him to join. Hey, Christian.
Hello.
Thanks for joining. Yeah, so essentially, yes, it is a starter kit in the sense that you can run .NET New on Bootstrap, and you've got a website. You've got a working website that you could, 2 clicks later, you could publish to Azure or any other web server comes to that matter. But really, the thing that I use it for the most is rapid application development, testing stuff out. If I want to test something out, I've literally grabbed clients' templates and just chucked it on top of this and used the back office to muck around with stuff and test stuff out. If you're testing packages, what could be a lovely, safer way than to .NET New, Umbootstrap, install a package, have a play around with it. If you're making your own package, so I've built my own packages in this as well. And then other things such as I wanted to muck around with HTMX using the content delivery network when it was made available, and I just spun up an Umbootstrap, and immediately, you know, in half an hour, I started to get the gist of HTMX because I got something real to play with. A few weeks later, everyone started getting into Astro, so I thought I'll give that a go as well. Same with the content delivery network, and I spun up an Astro site and started making pages and doing routing, and that's what I love about it. It's just something ready-made that you can use for all different kinds of things. So sorry, I sound like I'm trying to sell it. I'm really just telling you what I use it for myself. So yeah, if I just whiz you through it. So basically, it consists of 2 key parts, I guess. One is layouts, and the other one is features. And features go inside layouts. And I'll just whiz you through the kind of features that I've got here. So, I mean, excuse the terrible AI generated, that was me testing Firefly when it first came out. So we've got things like every page has got this left nav in it for a start, which is a feature. And I'll show you how that is done in the back office and how it's done in code as well, if you like. And we've got some text that's been added by a rich text editor. And this is the partial for the rich text editor. I mean, that's not very complicated. If I can do it, it's not complicated. We've got an image feature where you can add an image to a page, and that is the partial for adding an image to an area in block grid. I'll just whiz through them quickly. HTML, so you can embed HTML. That's Lottie's video where we created that. So there's a place you can watch it there if you want. Just go to Umbootstrap and go to the HTML page. And there's the code to embed HTML. Sorry, to render HTML. And if you want to add some code to the page, you know, you might want to spin up an Umbootstrap and use it to store snippets of code. You could use it for that quite easily. I can't remember if I used Prism or something JS. I can't remember what the other one is. But yeah, just used a little JavaScript plugin which in turn had another JavaScript plugin that gives you a lovely little copy button. And again, it's, you know, a few lines of C# and you've got yourself a component. Links to child pages. I think I've got multi-node tree picker, or whatever something like that in the back end. Actually, this one you just point to a node, it goes and gets the children. This one, you go and choose what pages you want to link to. These are all, I'm sure you've all got something like this in every website you've ever built. Pagination. I do like somebody, I think it might have been Wes Boss the other day, says nothing gives me more pleasure than making pagination. And I said, me too, but responsive pagination. So yeah, that's just, but this is all Bootstrap. It's all, sorry, I should have said from the start, it's just Bootstrap, off the shelf, no customization, nothing done to it at all. And it works. I might have done something custom to make it jump down to the, you know, when you choose a thing, so it jumps down. But other than that, it's hardly customized at all. Internal link slideshow. Again, it's just Bootstrap slideshow. And this is all standard Umbraco C#, Razor Pages, Bootstrap. It's really, really basic stuff, all of it. And it should be responsive, I think. It'll probably break it now. Let's have a look. I can't remember. Squishy, yeah. And there's little touches like obviously the text disappears as it gets smaller. Again, all Bootstrap. Just all Bootstrap, utility classes, turning stuff on and off at Bootstrap breakpoints, which I really dislike and I want to customize. And I started doing it and I thought, I'm telling people it's just plain Bootstrap. Why would I do that? Navigation nested descendants is this left nav. FAQs. So again, if we've got time, I can show you how this works in the back office. But at the end of the day, it's block grid. It's nested content inside nested content inside block grid. To prove, because I kept seeing people asking, can you put nested content in block grid, or what's best, or who would win in a fight, or that kind of, you know, it doesn't matter. They're beautifully interchangeable and nestable. And again, this is just Bootstrap's bog standard collapsible accordion component. Tabs, this gets a little bit more complicated, and I think this might use nested content as well. I could have built this in 10 different ways, but at the end of the day, it's, you know, you can see here feature content title 1A, an image, feature content title B, some text, and you click on another tab and you've got some more content in there. And obviously tabs are used a lot. I'm going to say, because Mike will know this, thing about tabs like this, they're not accessible. And because they use buttons, and it probably takes about an hour to make it accessible and putting in heading 2s for the tabs. And then you'll get nicely nested as if it's just an open page, and you'll find assistive technology will be able to read the heading hierarchy correctly if you replace it with headings. And then lastly, a form. So yeah, that's basically it. A couple of other things, I guess, just to get it out of the way. So Umbootstrap is part of templates. I did intend at one point to do an Tailwind, but of course version 14 came along and I've got carried away with that, and Astro and HTMX and working and being in hospital. So that's kind of where that went. But I've tried to keep it up to date, and I have got not this version of Umbootstrap, but I thought I'd rebuild it from scratch just for the practice of doing it and to learn version 14. I have got Umbootstrap working on version 14 because it's so basic. There's nothing that won't. There were a few things that didn't work. One of them was the block preview, which, bless him, Rick has got working in 14 point. It's not an RC anymore, is it? 14 2 or something. I can't remember. Whatever it is. So you can find, if you want to contribute, you can find Umbootstrap on GitHub, and there's a whole bunch of explanations in the README about how to install it if you wish to contribute. And there's some other instructions if you just want to install it. And we come to installation in a second. And at last, you can drag Teams' little sharing bar out the way. On NuGet, somebody made a package for my package, which was really nice. So that's Hugh's custom form package, but this is the package on NuGet, and I've never really made anything like this before. We've made some packages for Umbraco that are specifically for Umbraco plugins, but I'm really proud to say I'm coming up to 10,000 downloads, although I don't really trust NuGet's number. It's probably 10 downloads really, but I don't know how NuGet measures it. And you can read it on here as well, especially if you don't like dark mode. There you go. And I've got to do a shout out to Rick's Block Preview, because I think that's what makes it really work. And then lastly, you can install it with Paul Seal's package scriptwriter. And I think if I just go search packages, I should have put that one in already. I did try and get them all set up. And there you've got templates, Umbootstrap. Oops, it's gone off to the page. Install script, and there's your script. The unattended install does not work. So you'll fill it all in and it won't be in the script. And Paul said it's something between Paul and HQ. I don't know, beyond me, but it doesn't work at the moment. But of course, well, you'll see how quick it's so quick and easy to install anyway. I don't really think it's a big deal right now. I guess I'll give you a quick whiz round the back office. Okay, so just having a look at the, why I built it really. So standard stuff: page properties, page title, short description, thumbnail. Nothing fancy in there at all. In our sites for clients, we built a whole thing: fallback, text fallback, and image fallback that will take all this stuff and chuck it into metadata and OG stuff, Facebook and Twitter and all the rest of it. But here I've just kept it simple because, for now. So this is it. This is the back office of Umbootstrap, and as you can see here, the page title Umbootstrap and the page description are appearing in a block in the grid. And if we click on it, it says no configuration necessary, because it's taking the data from somewhere else. So just to get that one out of the way, because the rest of it, you're editing the data. Every single site that I've built for the last 20 odd years, where I add what I call features, I add a feature title, a feature description, and a summary, near enough like a page. So where you've got a page title and a page description that appears at the top of the page and appears, the title tag and the meta description, I do exactly the same thing for features. So you can either do it using properties, or it can be a whole bunch of data that comes from an API somewhere. I don't care. If it's got a title, it's called title. And if it's got a description, it's called description. Because so often I see sites built where what's being displayed at the front end will use blog title, press release title, podcast title, in the front end, you don't need to do that. You only need one title, and that way you can write fantastic minimal CSS and C# comes to that matter. It goes all the way through. So, and why do I do that? What happens? What happens in the front end is that they turn into heading twos. So every section that you add to a page, actually, I've probably got that wrong. That might be a heading 3, but I think it's a heading 2. Yeah, it's a heading 2. And if you put a grid of things, it will put a heading 2, and all the cards in the grid will have a heading 3. But at the end of the day, most clients, as you know, unless they're absolutely fantastic with CMSs, somebody said 5 o'clock on a Friday, oh, we must get this thing into the website. We've only just got all the details. It's 5 o'clock on a Friday. Please put it in now. And the last thing they want to start doing is going, right, what's the heading hierarchy in this page? Blah, blah, blah. So I build headings into the features. And obviously bigger sites, it gets more complicated, but you'll notice every one of these has got a title, a description, content, and there's the summary at the bottom. Really, really simple way to do stuff. Of course, it might be more complicated that there might be a published date you want to add there, or an author. There might be a little, what people call an eyebrow, the little lead thing that sits above titles. And we could build all that in as well. I don't know whether to go. Do you want to see the settings for that rather than me going through every single component? I know I've got 2 hours, Justin, but I don't want you all being asleep at the end of it.
I suppose it's really up to you, whichever you think's more logical from your perspective to describe it all. I'll leave it up to you. I mean,
I'll tell you what. I'll try and keep it brief. So I'll do it this way. This is me. If anyone here knows me, go on, Ravi.
I was going to say, what you're about to do, if you go through one of the layouts, like the 363.
That's what I was thinking.
And then talk about just using a simple thing. I mean, we've all got our own different opinions on how you should structure one of those features.
Of course.
And I suppose the one thing that I'm interested in is looking at the code of one of those to see how that maps to the.
I'll work my way through to the code.
To the Umbootstrap, as in, like you said, you've got a heading. How does that match to the other thing so that I can get that in here, which means that I can then take this as a starting point to take away.
Yeah, let's get you through. So obviously we've got the back office, and then we've got the settings part of the back office, which is another level deep, and then of course we've got the code after that. And actually, just quick hands up, which I suppose you could do a hands up in the thing. Is everyone familiar with block grid?
Ish.
Okay, there you go. Okay, and then that's as far as I need to go, really. You'll start to get the gist of why I do things the way I do them as well, because it works perfectly with block grid without without trying to customize it. But at the same time, it is the way I work anyway, and I hope that the chats that had it with HQ when they were building it influenced that as well. But we'll see. So this is a layout. So let's take a 12-column layout first of all. So go to page content, and a 12-column layout. Lay stuff out in the 12-column grid that comes with Bootstrap. So probably worth mentioning, Bootstrap, like many other CSS frameworks, work on a 12-column grid. It goes way back. When I first started, I remember banner ads were beautifully divisible by 12, and screens are beautifully divisible by 12 because they're base 8, and 12 is a sublime number. And there's only 2. One is 12 and one's thousands of numbers long, and it's the most divisible number. And then underneath sublime numbers, you've got perfect numbers, I think. I don't know if there's any mathematicians here, you'll know about all that stuff. But anyway, that's why everyone ended up using 12-column grids. And there's all kinds of historical, I don't know, I think the pyramids are built base 12 and all the rest of it. And of course, we've all got 12 fingers. Oh, no, we haven't got 12. Right, anyway. So yeah, if we go into the layouts here, so this is a 363 layout. And what do we mean by 363? We've got 3 columns, 6 columns, 3 columns, a 3-9 layout. Go to the layout, and you can add things to these columns. And I'll just go to the home page because it's the easiest one to drag stuff about. You can literally go, oh, I want the introduction over there, and I want this bit about Bootstrap up here. The only thing is I'm having to scroll up and down to do it, and it's a bit annoying. So why don't I just click these 3 buttons and go into sort mode, which I completely forgot about, and drag them like this, and just move them all about, and then go back to end sort mode and see what it looks like. Well, yeah, horrible. Let's just refresh that. So yeah, that's what layouts are. And then features, we're going to features here. Each feature, if I go into a rich text editor, you go to page content, click on a text editor, it pops out. It's got a title, it's got a description, and it's got the content. And for those of you that know, which should be all of you, I guess, I've added the title and description. The summary are added using compositions, and then your content gets added because they're all the same for every feature. So if you're making a feature, you just use composition to compose your feature. If your feature hasn't got a title for some reason, then don't compose the title in. But other than that, it's the middle bit that we're interested in, composing in the rich text editor. Image, there we go, it's just a similar sort of thing. And I don't see any point taking you through all of these apart from, let's have a look at internal links children. Go and get the children. And in this one, oh, I've forgotten about, there's a whole bunch of fancy stuff built in that I completely forgot about. Background colors and what have you. But this one, you add it to a page and it just gets the children of the page. So if you've got some children you don't want displayed, they're going to get displayed, but obviously we can use Navi hide to hide them if we want, but I don't think I've built that in, but in other sites I would have done. Internal link selected, similar, but in this case, is that multi-node tree picker?
Yeah, whatever it's called these days.
Whatever it's called, yeah, I know, because they keep changing the name. Yeah, thanks, Ravi. I forgot about that. That's my excuse for forgetting what it's called. This is a little bit more interesting. Pagination. So I'm just trying to remember. Where is the content? I don't know. I've completely forgotten.
Setting. You don't have it as a setting within there, do you?
No, I thought I had it in the content. Oh, I think it's just a paginate. It's go and get the child pages and paginate them. That's why this.
Oh, right. Okay.
You haven't got to do anything. Sorry, completely forgot how I made it. And then, oh, that's interesting. So the slideshow, you can pick them. So there you go. There's your title, description, summary. Obviously, that's in the wrong place. So I should probably move that. Nested descendants, you just add it to a page. It's just a navigation. And FAQs, yeah, this one's a bit more interesting. So FAQs, if you want to add an FAQ, it's title, description, content, summary, exactly like everything else. And you add a feature component FAQ, one of these, which is a question and an answer. And that creates your FAQ. So that is nested content, nested in block grid. Sorry, it's not nested content anyway, it's block list. Every time I say nested content, I mean block list. You can correct me. I'm surprised I haven't been saying doc-type grid editor because we use that such a lot. And then tabs, I think that is the one that's nested twice. So obviously what you want to do here, when you want to add another tab, you'd add another tab. And when you add a tab, you want to add content to your tab. So you can go into this content, and I've allowed, which I will show you when we get to the grid editor, I've allowed rich text editors and images in that component. And you know what a contact us form looks like. So, right, if I jump to settings and go to data types and to grid, this is how it works. So, when you create a new block grid editor as a data type, you can create groups of things. In Umbootstrap, I've made 2 groups of things. And the reason for that, and this might be a good time to open Visual Studio. So I was going to begin with installing it, but because that's one of the best things about it. This is why I'm not a salesman, ladies and gentlemen. Right, let's pop this in here. So if we go into block grid, this is what comes off the shelf from Umbraco HQ. And if we open block list and then open components, yeah, it works in a similar way. So there is a components folder within the block grids folder where you have element types as opposed to document types. And the definition of element types is in the back office, and we can read it in a minute, but it's something along the lines of document types that aren't going to be used as pages in their own right, or something like that. They're document types that are going to end up in other document types, essentially. And from what I can see and speaking to other people, you're literally just toggling a button that says this node is an element type, not a document type. That's all. I think that is the only difference between a doc type and an element type. So you can imagine there's a lot of things you can do with element types. Each of the element types corresponds to one of those things in the grid. Now, the grid itself, if we open the default file here, I guess this is the bit you wanted to see. This is Umbraco's code that they give you when you first install it. And as you can see, there's some data attributes here that contain things like the number of columns in the grid, the default number of columns in a grid. So you could have 16 columns in a grid if you wanted to. I can't remember where you set it, but you can. Yeah, maybe in here. So default looks for areas. I might have this round the wrong way. I hope so. Should we have a look? It should say, shouldn't it? Items, yeah. So default looks for items. And again, this is the code that comes with Umbraco. And those items have row spans and col spans. I think I've got it around the right way. And those items then have areas, and the areas plural, the area holders, if you like, then have an area plural. I don't know how you would say that. Also has areas. So you've got an area container that has areas in it. Yeah. So if we go back here, an area is, if we open up the 12, when you open these up and you click on the button up in the top right hand corner here, you can see an area. And this is where I'm worried about playing with Umbootstrap and mucking it up and not making a new one. So I might make a new one in a minute if we're going to muck around with it. But you'll notice normally you give an area a name. Like if you've got a 363, you might call it left, middle and right. Except if it's on a phone, it's not really left, middle and right, is it? It's top, middle and bottom. Yeah, because it's responsive. So you need to think about naming things, and I call them primary, secondary and tertiary in a 363, for example. It's not, you know, I'm kind of okay with naming, and because I work on my own a lot. As long as I know what it means, that might not be good for other people. We know that. We know all about naming. And then you'll notice some other things in here as well. And it says grid column 12. That's a bit of Bootstrap markup, a utility class from Bootstrap. Why ever put that in there? Okay, so if I go to a 363, for example, and I go to areas, we can see here that say for example, the 6 area, yeah, is 12 columns wide. Sorry, is medium large. Sorry, is 6 columns wide on a large screen. It's 6 columns wide on a medium screen, but on a small screen, it is 12 columns wide. Is everyone okay with Bootstrap and Tailwind utility classes for sizing? I'm guessing.
Okay, that's literally the first time that's been explained to me in a way which instantly makes my brain go, yes, I know exactly what you mean. I've worked through it for years, not really understanding that chain.
Well, you might be pleased to know, Rev, we might be bringing back Umbraco and in a different form where you can actually do anything rather than just fixing Umbraco bugs. And I'm serious. I've showed how Bootstrap and Tailwind work, and then how it relates to just CSS to a few people, and they've had the same reaction as you, and that makes me think that's something else I should be doing for the community. So I will.
I say this as I mean, anyone else feel free to shout at me. You know, I've sort of understood they used to pattern match and get you and do things, but I've never had it explained as these are the way it works out the different breakpoints. It's just, but then that's not something I've needed to know.
Yeah, if you're not writing CSS, if you're not doing front end,
but that's it. So
you might not have to do it, but it's really, I think it's really, like this whole thing about should designers learn to code, should developers learn a bit about design, blah blah blah. And yes, yes.
So I've got away with it for a long time. Let's put it that way.
The thing about this is, Ravi, that the thing about this is you might only use one of these in here, and then use C# to change them. To write in. So basically, what I've done is I've written a set of responsive utility classes here.
Yeah. But it's just that I've never known the thing about the way it's written to collapse as utility. I know they relate to doing these things. I've never been able to go, oh, read it that way, because my brain hasn't been trained to think that.
I'm going to say something. While we're here,
Justin had the same look as me when you said that, and I noticed that. I went, yes, that made sense suddenly.
Right. So at the moment,
I don't want to get you bogged down in this.
No.
That was brilliant.
Pleasure.
That's the first time. Let's carry on with the rest of it.
Hopefully there's more. So I'm working with a framework called Foundation at the moment, which kind of stopped being worked on a while back, but it's in the project that I'm using. I had to learn it, and they're still using Flexbox for their grid. I'm not sure, XY grid, here we go. But they all follow the same principle. All of these things follow the same principle. Somewhere you will see some markup next to something. It doesn't have to be a grid, by the way. It could be a margin. So you could have, in a lot of markup, it might say MT2, MT3 or whatever, and that could just be margin top 2, margin top 3, for example, 1 rem, 2 rem, 3 rem. But what if you want to say, oh, on a phone, I want the margin top to be 3, but on a tablet, I want it to be 2, and on a desktop, I want it to be 1. Well, the way they do that is they tend to prefix things with the number of columns that the screen is at the time. Yeah, and essentially using media queries, which is querying the width of the screen.
Yeah.
We're miles past that nowadays, and the thing with frameworks is they have to catch up. We've now got container queries, which are amazing, absolutely amazing, because what you can then do is you can use media queries for whole screen layout, because that's what it's good for. You saying, I want the whole screen to rearrange, all the elements on the screen to rearrange based on the size of the screen. For container queries, where you've got a little container that's got other things in it, you kind of don't want those rearranging based on the size of the screen, because that context might not give you the result that you want, and it's actually very difficult, and you end up writing 8 media queries for a few components on the screen. With container queries, you just write one, and then you can do responsive typography as well, where the font sizes go up and down based on the size of the container it's in, and so on and so on. But we can go right off topic here. So I'll just show you this as an example. This is,
so I remember,
so things like
these days. I remember these days.
Okay, so here's a cell that says when the screen is medium sized, this cell, this area, is 6 columns wide. When the screen's large, it's 4 columns wide. And then if we go to get Bootstrap, let's just type Bootstrap, it'll be quicker. But I'm glad you're interested in this, because that is actually what makes it work. So, and also you kind of brought me on something that I don't know what order to mention these things in. So Umbootstrap will not work unless you enable Bootstrap's CSS grid. So by default, if you install Bootstrap, it uses Flexbox. We haven't got enough time today to start going into the difference between Flexbox and grid. But if I give you a very, very simple, reductive explanation, if anyone's interested, sorry if you're not, but I know from what Ravi said, it would be interesting to Ravi at least. So Flexbox was designed to take a series of blocks and put them in a row, either horizontally or vertically. And we've all seen how things like Bootstrap work, that if you squish the container that they're in, if you set Flex to wrap, if you've got 6 items and you squish it only 5 wide, you don't want your boxes to get smaller and smaller and smaller. You might want the bottom one to drop down. You can do that. And you can set your, my gosh, where's the docs now? Docs. Where's the docs bit? Where's just the docs? Just docs. Here it is. I must have clicked the wrong thing. So if we go to grid, their current grid, the one that they've been using for years, it kind of works the same way. It uses these breakpoints, and here's 2 tips. Right, so this would be a 6-6 in Umbootstrap, for example. This would be, I guess, a 4-4-4, I suppose so. And essentially, at the moment, all they're doing, they're not declaring anything. They're just saying we've got a row of stuff and we've got 2 things in it, and that's a column wide and that's a column wide, which gives you a column and a column. And this has got 3, and you've got a column and a column and a column. But when you want them to change sizes, you can start adding utility classes that invoke breakpoints, and that is essentially what all of these things do. So here you can see you only want this to be 8 columns wide on a small device. Yeah, is that?
Yeah.
You can see that's the same thing. However, this is using Flexbox. If I go to, I saw it a second ago. Oh, it's underneath here. CSS grid, right. So that's using Flexbox, which won't allow you to make T-shaped and L-shaped layouts. You can, but it's a lot of hacks to do it. And if you do it, if you use the hacks, you're going to really have trouble making it responsive. So you might be able to use a hack to get an L or a T-shaped layout. With CSS grid, you can lay stuff out how you want. And notice here that the syntax is slightly different. Yeah, so this will say, I want 3 areas in Umbraco block grid parlance. Yeah, I want 3 areas that are 4 columns wide of my 12 column grid. So you could just mark it up like that. But what if you want them to be different sizes on different devices? So again, you mark them up by saying on a medium size device, which is probably a laptop, yeah, I want it to be 4. Yeah, and I'm trying to find one where they've made it a few different sizes. Yeah, they haven't really. And you can move stuff around and do all kind of fancy layouts. And that's the benefit of CSS Grid. You can pretty much do as much as your imagination would let you. Just for the benefit, you know, this is a site written in my own markup. This essentially is what I would call a 3.9, and within it here you've got a 3.6.3, and if I just do an inspect element, let's pop that over here and look for the word grid. Yeah, if I click the word grid, can you see that, Ravi? Is that?
Yeah, no.
So what we're saying here is this element only spans 3 columns, but it spans multiple rows. Yeah. Like old HTML tables years and years ago. Remember Colspan?
This part I sort of got my head around this part. It's like I said, just the language thing.
Okay, so you got to bear in mind that CSS frameworks are intermediary languages. They're taking the language of CSS, writing it in a shorthand fashion that you can then add to HTML elements as what's commonly referred to as utility classes. So the most basic utility classes tend to be margin and padding. So you've got a div and you want to add a bit of padding, and you go P1, P2, 3, 4, and it will put, you know, one whatever unit you've chosen to use, whether it's 1 rem or a number of pixels, or however you quite often you'll find in all of these frameworks you can go in and configure them. So you could say 1 means 1.5 rem, for example. In this example here, the site I'm showing you, I've actually written that grid in ASCII. CSS grid is magical. It's magical. You can visually lay out the grid here, and all I've done is I've used breakpoints to say, and you can see the ones that are crossed out here, so you can clearly see that's mobile, where everything's stacked one above the other. Can you all see this okay? Sorry, is that text too small? Yeah, so this is saying, you know, at base, everything's stacked one above the other. At the minimum width of 25M, it's still stacked. At 50M, it's 2 columns. Yeah, at 75M, it's 3 columns, but that one at the bottom spans 2 columns. A dot means, thanks, Christian. A dot means span this into the next column, but without putting anything in it. Or it might be an empty space. No, it might be an empty space. But yeah, you can write it out in a fashion that you can read it, which is what I really like about this. And then if I go to...
Just going to say that's very nerdy, Dean. That's very nerdy.
You see all these things in boxes?
I love using that as well, to be fair. I think you can use emojis as well.
Yeah, of course you can.
Oh, good God. Has the world gone mad?
I'm trying to find... Let me see if I can find a grid that... Yeah, that's probably not the best thing. Oh, here we go. Right, okay. So here I'm saying that I'm using data attributes. Yeah. So I'm saying so I can make that bigger, can't I? There we go. That's better. So you don't just have to use CSS classes. You can use data attributes. And I think this is what will interest the .NET C# people, because you can pull data attributes from weird and wonderful places that might suggest wherever this content is presented, I want it laid out in this fashion. It's really important. It's a table of, I don't know, financial data that must appear this way, for example. So you can literally create a set of data attributes. Ignore the 1, 2, 3, 4 columns. That really means 3, 6, 9, 12. Yeah. I'll put it in groups of 3 because it's a simple website. I'm never going to have a 2-column bit and a 5-column bit. So I just wrote it that way. But basically what I'm saying here is that when this is 1 column wide, I want the items to be laid out into a grid and I want them to be stacked. When it's, yeah, I mean, basically they're all in a, that's not a good example. Hang on, let me see if
you make the point.
But you got,
point. We got the point, I think, from that.
Yeah,
you're describing and telling it to do what you want.
You got the gist of it.
And the order.
And then the other, that's the wrong Bioworks. Bioworks US, of course. Yeah, that'll do. And then the nice thing about these kind of things, and this is the benefit of working on a bigger screen, but you can also do things like, how am I going to do this? Right, you see the grid down there? If I said at 12 columns wide, you can see I've written it 3, 6, 9, 12. Yeah, at 12 columns wide, make the number of columns that the things in it is only 2, not 4. Yeah, and obviously you can do that programmatically, but look how simple that is with the tiniest amount of code. Right, should we get back to Umbootstrap? Let's get rid of all this stuff. Okay, so getting back to Umbootstrap, that's how long I've been talking. I've got a 2-hour timeout on that, right? So when you create these areas, you drag them like this, and when you drag them, there is data attached to them that is getting measured here. Yep, the column span of those areas. Yep. So when HQ built this, the only thing that I found was a negative, and they ran out of time because this was just before they started talking about version 14. It's not responsive. When you drag an area, all you can say is whatever size the screen is, this is 3, 6, 3. Yeah, which is a problem because on a 363 layout, this will be the night Azure goes down. There we go. Right, on a 363 layout, 363, and I'll move this over here. I'm just making it responsive. We want stuff to happen. Yeah, so it goes from 3 columns. By the way, I wouldn't really do it like this. It's just a demonstration to show it goes from 3 to 2 to 1. To be quite honest, I'd probably move things around the page so they make sense on the device that they're on. But again, it's just a simple demo to say 3, 2, 1. How is that done? If we go back to the back office here and look at the 363, what we've said is that it's probably easier for opening it up, that at the base size is 12. So if we do mobile first, yep. So on mobile, the 3 is actually 12 columns wide. Yep. So it fills the width of the screen. on a medium-sized device, when we've got two, a 6 and a 6 side by side. Can you see my hands? Am I waving my hands about for nothing? I am, aren't I? You can see my
just
screen,
see the
not
top
me.
of your hands. It's all like there.
That's quite screen,
funny.
really, but yeah.
Okay,
fine.
so you've got two blocks side by side, 6 wide each, yeah? And that's where we set that. We say the number of columns, the grid columns on a medium device is 6. Yep, for this area. Yeah, that area becomes 6 on a medium-sized device. And then on a large device, it's 3. So on a large device, that and that are 3, and that is 6. Yep, but on different sized devices, they take up a different number of columns, and hence you can change those layouts. So that is how CSS Grid interacts with these layouts here. Yeah, and you'll notice that these layouts are in a group, and you can create groups. Yeah, you see you've got add group at the bottom there. Yes, you can create as many of these as you want. I keep them simple like this in Umbootstrap because it's a simple site, but you might end up with a complicated site with hundreds of features and find that you have to group them in different ways. If I did, I would probably begin them with layout blocks and then feature blocks, custom feature blocks, I don't know, podcast section of the website or feature blocks, whatever, so that they all begin with layout and feature. And initially I was using C# to say if this this element type comes from a group in the block grid editor that begins with the word layout, treat it this way, and if it begins with the word feature, treat it this way. And Paul Seal had a look at it and said, oh, we can just use the group names. And then he had a look and went, oh no, we can't. And then he had a chat with HQ and they couldn't do anything, so he wrote an extension for Umbootstrap that I don't understand, and one day maybe if Paul's in one of these he can explain it, but I can't. But he wrote something that goes and gets the group name properly so we can use it in our razor views. And then if we come to the let's find a nice simple one. Rich text editor. So I don't know how to ask this to a group of people in a virtual meeting, but is anyone interested in how you get the element type into the block grid editor? Or you know how to do it?
I'd do a quick demo anyway. Are you using the Rick's package or custom thing?
Oh, I see what you mean. Well, that's the preview, which is slightly different.
Oh, yeah,
but,
sorry.
So each one of these has a content model, and if we open up the content model, you can see it's essentially a composition, and the composition is composed of the common things that are common to all features, which takes me right back to the beginning of what I was saying about why I build things this way. And oddly enough, when I first started watching Paul Seal's videos, he was doing it exactly the same way I do, and I felt validated that I've been doing it that way for years and not the wrong way for years. If Paul Seal was doing it, it's the right way. That's how I see it. But essentially, you just compose in the thing that you want into that. Now, I know there's other ways to do it. We could make a thing that always has the title and description, but then sometimes you don't want the title and description in the feature. So I try to do it the easiest way. I really wish we could nest compositions. You can't, but you can nest element types in element types in element types using block list and block grid. So in a way, this has given me something that I always wanted, was to be able to nest things inside things inside things inside things. And in the wrong hands, that can be a big mess. But if you've got a very simple methodology and a set of rules of how you're going to do it, you've got areas, you've got features, and then within features, you've got your components of your features, it's not complicated. I hate saying this because it makes me sound stupid saying it, but if I can do it, anyone can. Seriously, you know, it's really. I know everyone uses the analogy of Lego and Meccano in these things all the time, but it is. So yeah, these obviously, say for example, where's the thing that goes and gets them? Feature component, no configuration. I think I can get there in the end, but obviously that goes off to. So if we go into the code, let's open up a feature. Well, actually, should we open up a layout component to start with? So this is a layout component, and I am using block preview. So if anyone's following this on video and copies the code, you need to bear in mind this code has get preview as opposed to just get block grid, I think, is in a standard block grid editor. Yeah, so please be aware of that. So to use block preview, you have to add the word preview into your await. So yeah, this is essentially a 363 layout. This is a 39 layout. And the bottom line is for every one of these things, when you go into the content model, it has to be the same name, layout 363. The name has to match. So everything you've got in your components folder, the file name has to match what you're putting into the property in the block grid editor. So let's get rid of all of those, close all tabs, and open, what's a simple one? Rich text editor? Yeah, that's the simplest one. So, you know, how complicated is this? Obviously, I showed you that coming to it from the back office before, but at the end of the day, all it's doing is saying, go to the block grid item and go and get the rich text from the block grid item and chuck it in the page. And this is why I love it. If I go into document types and layouts, for example, this is the 363 layout. There's nothing to it. It just corresponds to that file. If I go into features and I go into the rich text editor, obviously, because it's a feature, it contains title, description, and summary. I'm just being a bit conscious of the time. Do you want to see how you install it? I think that's probably. Should we do that? Should we make one?
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah,
I think otherwise we're going to run out of time. I could go. I could honestly. I could do half a day on it. I think I have done with some people, but so there's two ways to install it, and I'll probably just shut. Have I shut all the browsers? Right. Okay. So I hope I've written a good README. I remember once being roasted on Umbraco when we first made our text fallback editor for not having a good README by Callum and Martin. You know, what's the point of having a package if you haven't got a good README? So I really went out of my way to ensure that my README works in Git, in NuGet, but it didn't work in the marketplace. And I had to spend some time because it was a .NET new template and not a package. We couldn't get it working, but as you can see, it is now. Although it doesn't do all the nice Bootstrap, GitHub markup. So simplest way to install it. Okay, so if let's make a new, let's just open repos, wherever that's opened. Where has that opened? Over here. Of course, it would be 3 windows away. Oh, we've got one here actually. Right, okay, so yeah, let's just go to repos, and I've got something beginning with X quite deliberately at the end here. And let's just make a folder, and we just call it Kent to put it in for now. And right click and open in terminal. And let's do .NET new Bootstrap, and then we want to give it a name, and we will call it test 01, and let's see what happens. So there's some funny errors that I don't know what they are, but let's have a little split screen and go to Kent. We don't need the preview on, and test 01, and we've got Umbootstrap. And then I think we want to CD into test 01, because I think that's how this does it. And then .NET run, I hope. It says building. It's made a package like JSON and a load of yellow stuff that I never know what that means. Cannot be used for, no idea.
Looks like it's just a slight type mismatch.
In the .NET new template, probably. Yeah, maybe some things have changed. I don't know. Should we run the HTTPS version and see if it breaks? Well, what do you know? Okay, so what does Umbraco? Oh yeah, Umbraco means Allen key, doesn't it? Kind of. So let's have Allen key, and Allen key that'll do. And we are going to use SQLite, database name Umbraco, and install. Let's just drag that out so we know which one we're working with. And there's a website, and you click login, and there's a website. Now imagine that's your agency's starter kit. Imagine that's your agency's starter kit with all the stuff that you usually do for all your clients and all your favorite slideshows and all your favorite Umbraco forms installed and all that, because you can make that part of the installation. And let's go, whoops, that wasn't the right way to do it. Let's go, I'm doing the wrong thing, aren't I? There we go. Let's see if there's a front end. I don't mind editing this one either. And that's it. That's how long it. And if I really wanted to get fancy, I could do .NET publish it to Azure, and have a website on Azure in minutes.
Nice.
So, who said nice?
I did.
Cheers, mate. So I guess the next thing is installing it from Visual Studio. So let's open Visual Studio. And
sorry, just before we jump to that, Dean, does that,
yes,
the way you just done it just then, is that just pulled down and installed it on the latest version of V13, or is it tied to a particular version of V13?
It will install a version tied to a version, yeah. So it will install a version of Umbootstrap tied to a version of Umbraco, and that's why I suggested that I don't really think it's great for production, because this is my package with no easy way if somebody says, oh, we want to update it, Bob. I mean, you can update the version of Umbraco once you've built it.
Yeah.
So you've got a working website and you can update the version of Umbraco, but it's your website after that. It's not, like normally with packages, you install a package and then some things change in Umbraco and you'll wait for the package owner to update it. That's not going to happen with this because it's a website. It's just a website with content in it. It's a built website. I don't know if I'm the only package is block preview. Actually, I think it's got Aaron's mega menu in it as well. I can't remember if we I think we did put a mega menu, but
yeah, that's fine. But if someone wanted to upgrade the version of Umbraco, that's up to them to do that on top of once they've installed it.
Once you own the website, it's your website. You can do what you want with it. Right. But what I'm saying is, rather than using mine, and this is the whole thing. I'm not trying to kind of sell, obviously not financially, but I'm not trying to sell Umbootstrap to people to say, oh, you should really use Umbootstrap. Really, what I was trying to do is demonstrate block grid, which I think people don't understand. They're not using it. Upsets me. I think HQ done an amazing job. There's loads of competitive products out there that use the equivalent of block grid. WordPress has got Gutenberg, you've got Wix and Squarespace, and they all use pretty much the same thing. That's drag and drop. And my entire career has been about not just user experience for the front end users, but editor experience, because I've always worked in content management systems and spent 20 years refining my own content management system and literally sitting screen sharing with clients that think that the address bar is the Google search, and you got the gist of it. That Facebook's the internet, and those people are editing websites. Because Bob in accounts knows how to use Excel, all of a sudden he's in charge of the company's website. And you give them a content management system and it just blows them away. If you say, oh, we've made this so you can do what you like and you can do this, and you end up with horrific websites. Whereas you can see by me, you saw how my attitude about, no, you're getting a heading 2 and you're getting and you better only use 155 characters for that description, because they end up with nice websites out of it. And I can tell you now, the SEO for I think I've built over 300 projects, and I can tell you now, nearly all of them have been top of the search engines for their chosen keywords. 9 times out, when they get their website, it's 4 lots of 100 in Lighthouse, but of course they break that quickly as soon as they get Google Tag Manager installed. And civic cookies and God knows what, how it goes. I can see Richard nodding there after along with I feel like I'm only old man Richard, sorry. So yeah, should I just install? Go on, sorry, if you've got questions.
I'd say I'd just go on your comment around the grid. Like, I think the grid stuff is fantastic in Umbraco. I think a lot of people potentially, I guess it depends on the type of project you're doing, but from a development perspective, depending on your QA system or capabilities, as soon as you add in the ability to have multiple column layouts, and obviously you can select which elements and which features are that in your sort of naming convention, which features can go in which layout, but you're still then adding for every single feature you create, you have to account for every single screen size. And with things like container queries, it's much easier now than it used to.
Yeah.
There's still an additional developer amount of time, a massive amount of QA and back and forth. So I wonder if a lot of the websites that I tend to build tend to go more on a column by column, not column, a row by row layout.
They are rows. They're rows. But, I can answer a bunch of that, Mike, if you want.
Yeah.
So first of all, they are rows. I just want to find a simple page, really, I guess. Oh gosh, there's so much stuff I haven't shown you. Right. First of all, you can copy a whole block from one page to another for a start. So if you're making a new page, it's just as quick to make a blank page and copy a whole block and paste it in. In fact, this is the Kent website, so I can do it. I'll make one. Let's do one. Okay, so obviously you can copy a page and it will come with its grid. But say I want to copy some bits out of other ones or whatever. So let's just go create web page, page content, add a block layout. I want a 12, and in the 12, I'm going to add title and description. No configuration required. That's a block preview thing. I don't want to say anything, but yeah, it does that for a minute until you save it. There's another chap who's done another block preview that gives you the preview before you save it. But Rick's been amazing, so I'm sticking with Rick's for now. So yeah, obviously you can add any one of these in this area. So in this instance, I'd probably add the navigation, which of course it won't display yet, rich text area with the title, description, some text and a summary, a secondary area with an image of, I don't know, my pretend code garden images. There you go. Right. Okay. And then that image has got a title, a description, and a summary. Okay. Create, save and publish. Oh, that might be something to do with it. Let's call it that. Save and publish. Got a page. Yeah. So I get what you're saying, but that's just a row. Then you can add another row. So you could add a 363 and a 12, right, etc. So, but you don't want your clients to do that. Go on, Mike.
Just give that. So you've created a row where you've got the nav, you've got the text and the image. Yeah. So let's focus on the image.
Yeah.
Right. So if we want to have a fully responsive image that is using correct source set values and correct size of values, you need to know where it lives on the page. You need to know the size of the page.
Not with source set, you don't.
That will appear on the page.
Not with source set, you don't.
It depends on how you're using source set, I guess.
If you put the implied sizes into source set, then it'll only load. So say for example the page loads on a desktop full screen like this. I'm pointing at my screen again. If it loads on a desktop like this, and you've got that little image of people dancing at Code Garden, then it will go and get that sized image, because that's the size that is loading there. Yeah. So, but I understand what you're saying. Actually, no, you're right, because of the size. Yeah, it will go and get it based on the screen size. But you could write the rules that at this screen. Yeah, you'd have to write 3 sets of rules for the different screen sizes.
So that's where for me it starts getting complicated.
But well, you're saying that, but you've only got to do it for your image feature, haven't you? You haven't got to do it for every image.
Oh, it depends on the components you're putting in each section.
In what way?
So say if you have another feature that is, let's say a card. A card is a nice one. So say if you have a card that you have a set of, say you have 12 column row, and you have cards that go 1, 2, 3, 4. And then you have another page where it's a slightly different layout. So you maybe have a 50-50, and maybe the card's not the best. But
no, I understand what you're saying. And then you got 2. You see what you're saying is you got 3 4-column cards, and then another page. Yeah, I mean you could write the source set for you just put it in the C#. And that I do that stuff all day. I mean, I've literally been doing it for the last half dozen weeks on the project that I'm working on. Exactly that kind of thing. If this thing is in this area, here's the template for it. You can do that in your features. You can write that into your features. So in your image, you just write. Sorry, someone want to ask a question?
Yeah, I was just about to have you use Slimzy.
This is more of a personal preference for me. I don't like having to rely on a piece of JavaScript to handle how my images load.
Same. Yeah.
Okay.
So
because it's something that we developed, and it basically obviously gets around this issue because it always detects your device, detects your size of screen, and then it puts the image to the best quality that you need in the space where it's needed. and subsequently you always get good quality image in the right space.
I used to use because that uses lazy sizes, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I used to use that directly, and then when lazy loading images became native, I sort of moved away from it. But yes, it obviously creates a dev overhead, but that's just me being picky. And again, Dean, like all this stuff, it's doable, but for me,
Mike, honestly, it's not. So what you're saying isn't picky. I have tried Slimzy, Clive. I think it's actually great, but I mean, Mike's community of people that try to tread lightly and use as little JavaScript as possible, and if you can do it in CSS, do it in CSS, etc., etc. I don't mind writing a few lines of CSS that says, if this is in this size column, and don't forget you can grab the columns really easily in your C#. So if it's in this, if it's in a 3, use this source set. If it's in a 9, use this source set. Yeah. So it's not. I don't want to say it's not an insurmountable problem without kind of addressing the fact you do have to do some work. I think it's a very small amount of work. It's probably about a dozen lines of code, and you only have to write it once, and you only have to write it once for that component. So each component comes.
Yeah,
so and as you said, with container queries, we can do a whole bunch of amazing stuff now. In fact, to be quite honest, at the moment, this isn't really related, but where's my container queries stuff? Container query style, container query line size. You can just based on using containers and not using. I did have a much nicer.
Did you want to show that in a bit more detail to people who may not be familiar with container queries?
Yeah, with pleasure. So
if people are interested, obviously it's going through realms of front end.
Can I just ask a more general question before you do? With regards to the fact that CSS grid system is still experimental.
It's not. It's
just that they just haven't updated their documents and the idea that you have to opt in for Bootstrap.
Oh, you're just talking about Bootstrap. Going back to my point about frameworks, they're always behind. Look, if I said I can't say I hate CSS frameworks anymore, it's not fair to say. It's not fair. It's not fair to say that, and also people will be really rude to you on Twitter. So this is how I think about it. So people that write CSS have been using utility classes for years.
Yeah.
I use utility classes in lots of different ways. I use them as data attributes. I don't really use them for things like padding and margin and stuff like that, because I tend to write components, as we were just saying, Mike, and those components have got quite specific needs. So I don't need to add 30 general utility classes to just one HTML element that's actually nested 12 HTML elements that each have also got 30 utility classes. It's ridiculous when you can just write card, and it's a card. So that's the first thing. That's why Bootstrap releases are every, 2 years or 3 years. Foundation, the thing that I'm using in this other project, I looked it up, hasn't been touched for 5 or 6 years or something, and everyone's still using it. It's bonkers. Let me show you this quickly. Consider this a TikTok. That's how quick I'm going to do this. You ready? Right. Responsive font sizes. You can now say, using Clamp, my font size is 1 rem at the smallest, 5 rem at the biggest, and ideally 3 rem. Yep. That's your responsive font size. It will work. It will kind of work. But it won't work. What am I trying to say? It might not work exactly how you want it to. You want more control over it. So what you can do is you can say, well, I'm happy with the smallest and never want it to be smaller than 1 rem. I never want it to be bigger than 5 rems. However, I really would like it to consider the thing that it's in a bit. Yeah. So really what I would like, and this is a daft way, I probably wouldn't write it this way. I'd like it to be 1 rem plus 4 container query widths. Like, what is the width of the box that I'm in? Yeah, and I know I'm squishing the whole screen here, and as you can see, it's changing color. But the size is changing based on the container. Now, you could not have a container at all and just use font size, clamp, min, max, clamp. Yeah, the thing in the middle, yeah, is being clamped by min and max, yeah. But what you could also do is say, well, actually, when the container is a maximum width of 80 characters, now, it doesn't have to be characters. It could be 300 pixels. It could be 200 rem. It could be 50%. No, it can't be 50. I don't think you can use percentages. But basically, what you can say is, when it's a different size, and you know what you were just saying about source set, Mike, using a different source set based on the container, this is using a different set of clamp sizes based on the size of the container, which gives you the ability to have different size text in different containers, but it's also responsive. So if you've got a 6 and your heading to is 24 pixels, and you've got a 3 and your heading to is 20 pixels, and you squish them, and they can both get bigger and smaller, but within the constraints of their container that they're in. That's it. I think I better stop. Bloop. What's the noise TikTok does at the end? That. Is that okay? Has everyone got the gist of that? I'm going to revisit all this stuff a lot more. There are style queries now, which is amazing. So this is using a container query, but there are now style queries that I couldn't get working, and they're knocking about in here somewhere, but they're coming. Yeah, I did have some nicer container query stuff. I'm sure I put them in a category, but I can't see where categories are. That's pretty. Oh, collections. Are they called collections? Oh, here we go. Collections. Have I got a collection of container queries? CSS
Yes,
grid.
easy. Halfway up.
Halfway up. Halfway up. Halfway up. Have I got a nice one in there? Container queries. Old style min max. There you go. So that's an SVG being styled by a container query. You know, there's tons you can do. Style, I don't think. Yeah, it's not working, but I think it might be working now. I don't know. I did have a whole bunch of CSS grid stuff, but yeah, let's not do that today. I'm trying to think what else is block preview. Should we do block preview quickly? Otherwise, I feel I've let Rick down. Block preview is a package. Go ahead. Yes, question.
I'm going to say worth mentioning is a new version this afternoon that fixes the need to save the page before you can preview.
From Rick.
Yeah.
I love it.
Richard has taken. I was going to say there's. I need someone else with a Rich. We need another Rich. Anyway, he's put it in the chat.
Okay, fantastic. Oh, amazing. Yeah, and I think there's a little bit of competition, friendly competition between Rick and this other chap. You know, who can get what out first, and as different bits of version 14 come out. So I have got, as I say, I've got an Astro Umbootstrap, and I've got an HTMX Umbootstrap, and I've got a version 14 Umbootstrap. I mean, they're all rubbish. They're all kind of bits, held together with sellotape. So I'm not going to show you them today, but
preview.
Block preview.
Stay on track. Stay on track.
Come on, Dean. You can do it. Block preview. Right. So Rick has a package called Block Preview. That's what allows these to get previewed. I think I've actually kind of covered it in. Did I close Visual Studio? Why would I do that? Why would I close Visual Studio? How stupid. Actually, what we can do is, that's a good idea. let's do this. Okay, so right click on your project, open with Visual Studio 2022. And if I think, if I'm right, well, tell you what, let's just do a Control F5. So, it knows it lives, an error occurred. Really? Oh no, port conflicts. Right, let's turn this off and see. Yeah, so you can see it. So if you build it with .NET Run, you can create the solution in .NET. Sorry, if you use .NET Umbootstrap, you can create the solution at the time, but because I'm very lazy and I tend to just type .NET Umbootstrap and then just get the project, what I tend to do is open it in Visual Studio and then save the solution in the folder. So then you get your, well, I presume most of you do it this way, but in fact, I've saved it in the wrong folder like an idiot. I normally save it in the folder above, sorry, but yeah. If you build it using, should you just quickly make one in Visual Studio? It's probably easier. So if we go to Ken, go to Visual Studio. Okay, so create a new project, search for Umbootstrap and it will bring all this stuff up, and choose Umbootstrap, choose next, test 02, and we want it in the Kent folder. So let's pop that in here, and we won't put the solution in the same directory this time. And click next, and we don't put in a connection string because it does it all itself because it does an installation, so you can do it then. That's what I mean. There's a little bit of a thing about the unattended install that I haven't kind of worked out, but I don't think I'm going to because of version 14. I don't know how much effort to keep putting into this. And then if we go here, and it probably won't run because all the ports are, I don't know. It's going to run. Yeah, it's going to run. Right, let's close this one. And we should get, in theory, another Umbootstrap. So I like using Visual Studio, to be honest. Even though it's a .NET template, I like all the .NET templates that are available. I like going, make me a Blazor site, make me a Razor site, and it just makes it. I just think it's incredible. So, Alan P, and let's give it a username and password. And SQLite, Umbraco, install. Yeah, there's probably a bit too much to cover with actually doing CSS grid properly and doing block grid properly. Okay. We should have a one-to-one chat, Mike, because I could show you a load of project stuff where we've kind of covered all the things that we've actually built all the things that you were asking about. But yeah, there's another on Bootstrap. And as I say, let's say you wanted to go and install a package and test it out, you can. Block Preview is getting installed as part of the installation. It's in the .NET New package, along with any other dependencies. So as I say, I think maybe that isn't, I don't know. I think it is Aaron Sumnev, we've just not got a lot in it. Just try to say, oh, yeah. And then there's some other stuff like for example, what's that? About us? About, I don't, yeah, it doesn't matter. It's not the real site, is it? Right, how have I got that background image in there, you ask? I don't know. In the layout. Where is it? Background image. You can add a background image in the settings. You can add a background color in the settings. You can add a background image to. Can you add one to the whole block? I don't think so. To the layout, yeah, you can add a background image to the layout. You can add colors and this is nice. You might like this. I don't know. Right. Let's say we've decided we don't want that to display. You get a little no entry sign next to it there. How did you do that? You might ask. So if I go to settings, yeah, this color changes. And if I go to data types, and then I go to here, it's using the Angular syntax that we're never going to use again after version 14. But anyway, yes, so you get a little green dot if it's published, and you get a little no entry sign if it's not. Yeah.
That just hides it from the front end, I guess, does it?
Oh yeah, it disappears from the front end. I don't know if I saved it.
No, I don't think you do.
I can't remember if it's got Navi hide in it. It's like, what was it about? No, it couldn't have been I think if I do that, it's going to hide the whole thing, isn't it? Let's do it on the home page. Right, so let's go to home page, and we've decided we don't like this anymore with the horrible buttons and everything, and we turn it off, and we click submit, and it's got a little, instead of a little green dot there, that doesn't come from Umbraco, that's added using that thing, and save and publish, and go to the front end, and it was the home page, and it hasn't got anything in it, but it has got an empty area which you can see because it's got a background color. So let's go to here and turn the background color off. Can do that? Yeah, we can do that. Oh, I'll put in, because I don't know why we do things like this, I'll put in you can change the shade and the opacity, and why would I do that? I have absolutely no idea.
Cool design feature.
I wasn't very well. I just started making stuff. I don't know why I've done any of this really. But yeah, you can. I mean, if I turn it, well, yeah, that's the wrong one actually. It was the layout. So you could choose a lovely color, but you might want a pale shade, and you might want it to be a little bit transparent for some reason. And then you might want the areas, I don't know why you would, to be dark, and you can do that and save and publish, and I've got no idea what's going to appear. Yeah, black bits. Oh, I haven't unpublished it, have I? I should have noticed that, shouldn't I, with the little no entry sign. So yeah, and as you can see, so what I've done there, again, Mike, sorry, talking about what happens if you do something different with it. Yeah, so if you switch the colors to dark, it doesn't just make the background black, it actually makes sure that the text is white to go with it. I know there's lots of really fancy C# helpers now that will detect the contrast between the text and the back. I like those. So, but anyway, as you can see, make it black, you get white text, and the purple bit's semi-transparent purple, and it's all just in the settings. And sorry, again, Mike, I'm not picking on you, mate. You know I'm not. This is for good, all for good reason. In the areas, you can, and I presume you know this, Mike, anyway, you can go into an area, click on an area, and you can say you're only allowed to add, well, you don't want to be adding those. In fact, I should hide those really. You're only allowed to add HTML and code, because we're programmers. We don't want to see images and normal text. That's all we want in that left column of that particular layout, blah, 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 blah. So there's some other things as well that, bear in mind, this is just one block grid. So this is really important when it comes to the Lego Meccano analogy, is that it's 4-dimensional Lego Meccano, because you can create multiple block grids with multiple rows, with multiple areas, with multiple things allowed in them. And you can say, in this doc type, only allow these 2 types of block grids, a landing page block grid and a content page block grid. Or, I don't know, it's a magazine website where you've got some lovely fancy layouts where you've got images that slightly overlap the text. And, you know, when you start getting really, where the designer's gone mad in Figma and like forgotten that someone's got to build the bloody thing.
What do you mean,
So
last week?
Yeah, it's
Well,
incredibly
look,
special. It's very cool.
it's 9 o'clock and I hope you like it. And thank you very much. That's Umbootstrap. Is that okay?
Thank
I'm
you
happy
very
to
much.
talk longer. But
I can chat
Thanks very much, Steve. Yeah. That's all very interesting. I didn't know about the whole container query stuff, so I'm going to have to look into that a bit more.
Yeah, it's fun stuff.
So I've just I've just started adding responsive typography and container queries to my first paying client, because it's just really, I think it's just really well supported in the last sort of 6 months. And I tend to wait, even after, you know, they say it's well supported, I tend to wait a little while, because you full well know that the boss is going to call up and say, what on earth's happened to our website? I'm looking at it on my son's Tamagotchi and it doesn't work, or, you know, but anyway. Yeah, I'm happy to answer other questions, and I'm happy, if you want, to do a talk about container queries or CSS grid and Flexbox and the difference between them, any of that kind of stuff, if you ever want, if it's helpful. I mean, to be quite honest, as I say, I was thinking that kind of thing makes good lunchtime sessions. I could do, like, you know, 3 or 4 code pens of examples of. You could do a day's talk on CSS grid. To be quite honest with you, it's exceptionally complex, and also, to be quite honest, even things like container queries. There's people 10 times more knowledgeable than me doing really good talks about it, but unfortunately, I think their talks are just will go over most people's. It's just, it's not, like when you see a fashion show and you see all the models coming out wearing all this amazing stuff, and then you see it on the high street. it's kind of like that.
You're saying your high street and their haute couture, completely impractical and unwearable, but it looks great.
Well, all I think it is, I think there's some incredible stuff that you can do, and there's some people doing some amazing stuff with custom variables and container queries and CSS grid. The combination of those 3 things is exceptionally powerful. If you combine that with the fact that you can now do page transitions. So page transitions only used to work with a single page application, which is why they were very popular. You used to see, a lot of React websites would have lovely transitions where you'd get, a lovely background image with a little thing, and you go to another page and it shrinks up to the corner. Yet it's in another page. How did they do that? Well, because it was a single page application, you couldn't do it across pages. Now you can. So, you're going to start over the next, my prediction is over the next sort of 5 years, you're going to start seeing sites akin to what we used to be able to do with Flash. Not that, it was a good thing, really, building entire websites with Flash, but that was part of the reason agencies used to do it, because they could do really flashy transitions between pages and content.
I can envision a lot of, so I recently did a project that went live this week, actually, where I didn't use any Sass. I wrote it in pure CSS. Felt like the old days. It was amazing. And all the things that you use Sass for, you can just use CSS. You can nest
So
in CSS, you can look up the properties. It's wonderful. Imports.
I completely agree.
As a designer by training and coming into websites, grids to me are a different thing to the way you define grids. Obviously, I use grids in the way that newspapers, magazine layouts, and that is what the core Umbraco grid that Ken Jacobson demonstrated at the UK festival is all about for me. I only have one client I would trust to use that, but I do feel that makes websites look more unique. Just to say, I loved everything you showed me. I've learned loads tonight, but I think the problem is that the row approach does make websites all look very similar. And I think having also been a Flash designer and built complete websites, totally interactive, dynamic websites in Flash, where people would do origami and Polaroids would fall to the ground and show all their stuff, I miss the diversity of design in websites at the moment. And I think what you're saying is coming makes me feel very happy that design websites will start to look a bit more different, a bit more unique.
Yeah. Yeah, there was a case where you had 100%. Lots of different things, and then everyone's collapsed into the grid layout, which has its charms, but I've done it
I think we need to be. Yeah, I think the only thing I would say is you're right about Umbraco grid. It's in the example that was released, you know, the example which was nice looking, you know, but it wasn't responsive for a start, which is a big deal, and that was
I say this with all the love, they don't try as much as they, you know, when they're doing that.
I just think they ran it. I just think they ran out of time.
I think there's a certain section of them who would love to do it and have it built in, but I think it gets thrown out with the dishwater a little bit at the end.
And again, I think most clients I know, if you gave them the actual grid, would ruin their websites.
Oh, within seconds.
What you've shown me tonight is what we do a lot. Is you can't really muck it up because you've got to put content in a row, and it's always going to balance. It's always going to match. The next row will look good. I think. Yeah,
you can restrict it. So you know the one that I showed you, like designing libraries. All they need to do is put in a bloody library, you know. Yeah. So, and bless him, Warren. Oh my gosh, he's absolutely amazing. You can start typing. Let me find a daft one. There you go, Latvia. Like, show me. Look at this. He's integrated Google. Oh look, because it's no idea why. I bet the thing's run out and they haven't paid it.
So someone's not set up their billing, have they?
They haven't paid it. Okay. Well, I won't you? But anyway, so just looking at the back end of this type of layout, they can't do anything. It's all locked down. There's no rows. There's nothing. It is literally. Is it going to log in on this one and let me? It's not going to let me in. Yeah. Anyway, long story short, it's literally just areas. They can only put things in the areas, and they can only put the things that we let them put in those areas.
It goes back to the idea of you've got to really think about what you're letting them do in the first place.
Yeah, but you ask them. It depends. Do you know what? Ravi, being honest with you, and I'm sure you've all had this situation. So you start working with somebody, and they go, "Yeah, I've got 10 years in marketing, I know SEO inside out, I'm a copywriter, I've done a bit of design, blah, 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 and I've used every CMS, and this is what I want. This is what I want you to build." And you build them that, and then they leave. And then the next person turns up, and they can barely use Word or whatever, or vice versa. You know, you build something really simple and locked down because the person you're working with, you don't want them to muck it up. And someone else comes along and says, "What do you mean I can't do this on the homepage?" You know, and so I hate to say it, but we've got to build websites for the editor. If there's only one editor.
But that's what I mean. It's the idea of
Can I just ask you to go to a website called peach.me?
This is going to be something absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, but
now, isn't
I
it?
just want to give you an example of. So this is a website that we built with the company. This is an interactive element. So every country you go to, the logos will change because it's dependent on the thing. But if you go to solutions and click the first one, creative and production. Yeah. So we've just given them, very similar to you. It's just rows. So if you scroll down, he's created all of this himself. It's got falling animation.
Nice. Yeah.
He has just got the most basic set of rows. He creates all of the SVGs and all that himself, and he does all this layout. I love this site because I have a really good designer who puts all the content in.
It's lovely. It's really lovely.
And the point is that what we've given him, he is only making look this good because he has got the skills to then go and just drop all these things into a very basic set of rows and columns and stuff. But he also, we're hoping to rebuild this. He's also wanting the grid to go mad with. That's going to be scary, but yeah.
It's the idea of, he understands, let's put a good image. We've had the classic of the 5K image. Sorry, 5K image supposed to be using for a header.
Yeah.
And they're wondering, do you know how many support tickets in the last 5 years I've had?
Really nice website.
It's a lovely website, but this picture's not right. Because I uploaded the normal one. You take it, you end up going and looking at the actual image they've sourced, and they picked, instead of the super humongous one, they picked the tiny one, and it's been trying to stretched.
Yeah, but
without fail. And I'm that's just a joke, but yeah, it goes back to whatever restrictions and making it for the person you're working with, and then having refresher courses and giving them guides or giving them how-tos, so if someone does leave, it makes it obvious. I mean, the editor experience is the major thing, but
I think
that's why Rick's thing with the Black Ops preview is probably the biggest bit of gold for that grid, for the grid.
Oddly enough, Ravi, I watch people using it and they turn it off when they've got really complicated pages. They go into sort mode because they're moving so much stuff about. But I think you've got a good point, Ravi, and I think it'd be a really good panel discussion at something like Code Garden or at a big event.
Yeah.
To get some audience participation about how much control you give users. And I guarantee you'll get a lot of disagreement about it because of people's experience with the different users that they're using. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, thanks, Mike. I was just going to show Mike. I agree with you. Oh, Mike's off.
He's got
I was just going to show him the SAS. Yeah. After him saying he's not using SAS. The only thing that I think I ended up using the SAS for in this was to generate overrides, utilities. Yeah, it's just to generate a whole bunch, all the shades. For example, but yeah, you don't need to use SAS anymore, really. I just find I find it useful for organising my code. But yeah, I'd like to move just to CSS as well now.
Your container stuff, is that just the Bootstrap thing, or is that a generic CSS thing now?
When you say container stuff,
you're saying about the using container to style things.
Oh, so container queries.
Yeah. Is that a generic thing, or is that a Bootstrap?
It's a generic thing.
Because we build our sites with Bulma, so I just wanted to talk to my guys.
I was going to say
that's really funny because that is the framework. So you've got Tailwind, Bootstrap, Foundation, and Bulma are the ones that seem to still be around.
What was the one you used to use, Clive? The one that
we used responsive VP.
That's it, responsive breakpoint gems.
Yeah. We did a lot of sites in that. That was very good for a while.
Yeah.
And we also use Material IO on a couple of sites because, funnily enough, the Peach one, we used that because they requested that. They wanted some of the functionality.
So when they have a specific requirement, obviously.
Yeah, that's the thing. When you've got a good designer running a site, they'll ask for a framework because they know who they can design.
They know what they're, yeah.
Yeah, so they've actually designed stuff knowing the Material IO, which is quite refreshing.
I say that's
So
Usually
I had a project where they insisted that I use Bootstrap and Material, and it was okay. I mean, I learned a lot looking at Material, but every time I clicked on something, it said content to, you know, to come in Google, and it got quite frustrating to use. But yeah, there's some really good stuff. I'd suggest go and have a look at.
Yeah, no, I'll just screenshot that. I'll put that to my guys. They may know already about it. Well, no, what will happen is I'll turn to my developers and say, "Oh, have you ever used?" Of course, we have been using them for ages, and it's like, so why haven't you told us about them? You know, it's like,
open secret.
We have demos days. Why didn't you demo it? And it's like,
I thought you'd know about that one.
Yeah.
So I don't think you can use style queries yet, and there's other ways of querying the style of things surrounding things anyway. But I think what will happen somewhere along the line, because we've now got all the tools. We didn't have all the tools to, when people used to say, well, let's build an interface like Flash, for example. Obviously there's code underneath it, but with modern CSS, I think we're in a position now. If you go and have, like, there's a little advert in Twitter that keeps popping up for Wix that's showing them using CSS Grid in Wix, but visually. And it's impressive, I've got to say. If I wasn't retiring in, I don't know, probably 3 years, I can legally retire, I suppose. You know, I might be worried that everything's going to go visual. But, you know, I worked in Adobe XD for years and used Figma a lot, but I don't enjoy it. I much prefer coding in the browser. But yeah, I think we will end up with people just coding responsive. They will have to understand how responsive design works, but they will be doing it in tools that generate the code. There's plugins for Figma now, there's things like Animar, but the code is terrible that you get out of it. And I've seen projects where people will design a bunch of templates in Figma, use something to generate the code for it, and then C# or a React developer will take those and will make 12 templates for pages that are essentially identical. That's 12 because they've been given the templates by the designers. And then they just code, just code in the content. But rather than thinking about a modular process of having a base template and then areas, then modules that go in areas, and so on and so on. If I said I don't expect everyone to agree with my way of working, I'd go a lot further than that. I think most people don't work the way I work. I've worked at lots of places and with lots of people, and developers kind of fix the problem in front of them, and designers look at the big picture stuff, and then somewhere in between there's a little missing bit of actually making it all maintainable, scalable and reusable. And that seems to have been 90% of my career, to be quite honest with you, making template systems and component libraries and design systems that you can when sites get upgraded, it's easy because it's all componentized. If you want to if a company's got, I don't know, 5 different subsidiaries that you want all the same brand, but you want it branded differently across the subsidiaries, you can do that easily. So I've done a lot of that kind of stuff over the years, and
I think that comes with sorry, but I think it comes.
Go ahead, Clive.
I think it comes with experience and what you've had to build. I used to work. I hate to admit this. I used to work for National Accident Helpline. I did the animated dog on their website from the original drawings from Aardman. But one of their dirty jobs was that we had to build 4 websites with the same code that all look different. Now that's a really good teaching thing. You've got the same code, but you've got to build style and CSS 4 completely different looking websites purely for SEO. This isn't the bad days. We're talking.
Oh, wow.
Where I
wasn't expecting that reason, Clive.
No, but the point was it teaches you how to take the same CSS framework it was the dirty way of using Zen Garden. So we created 4 websites that look completely different, that all had the same, pretty much the same content, just to drive you to the same result. And I think if you do a lot of that sort of stuff in your past, and you've come from different design backgrounds like I have, and it sounds like you have, you do learn that. And I think younger generations that are just building websites one at a time, they're not.
Maybe that's all it is.
They're just seeing the problem in front of them, they fix it, it's done. I don't think you have that thinking anymore to sort of train you to think better. It comes with experience, and
maybe that's all it is. But yeah, sitting in Islington College, Clive, by the way, my design training long time ago.